Appreciate how far witnesses have traveled to come here today to discuss this. It's a multifaceted discussion. This is the Budget Committee. And I think the whole issue of concentration in industry, I came from Main Street America, where we had no help from government, and we didn't have any of the crony capitalist things that occur largely through this place that gives a leg up to many industries. I'll cite that in the classic way the economy should work, you should have full competition, no barriers to entry. You should have an engaged and informed consumer. Those are the elements that make capitalism and free markets work. Sadly, over time, they evolve in a different way. But I'll go back to my original point. This is the Budget Committee, and I'm not sure that this is the jurisdiction that we can discuss it. Of course, the chair can discuss whatever he wants to. I think there's validity in looking at some of those issues. I'm going to focus on what I think we should be doing, and that's talking about the fact that we just recently eclipsed $30 trillion in debt as a country. The senator and I have had a vibrant discussion on the floor, reaching about 26 to 27 minutes 6-7 months ago. And I know there's a difference of opinion there too. But when it comes to how any entity works, you cannot borrow from your kids and grandkids on things that you are consuming, as much as we'd like to do it for whatever the benefit is that might accrue. It's a bad business plan. It'll run into the ditch in a hard way, and we'll have to reconcile it down the road to where currently we ought to be looking at the drivers of it, which would be Medicare, Social Security, programs everybody would want to be there and to be in sound shape. We keep plowing ahead now with $1.5 trillion deficits baselined, taking us into that next tier of indebtedness. It will not be a good ending for all the people that depend on it, mostly elderly, for their retirement and their health care. What I'd like to do is get back to the essence of this committee, which means that we do regular order, discuss these things, not talking about spending, a CR vote that we're going to have later today, where we're talking about a budget that should have been worked on last year, finished with all appropriations done by September 30th, 2021. That's not running the place very well for all the people that depend upon it. In this particular dispute with workers and mine, that's probably not the domain of the Budget Committee, although I understand the relevance of it. It probably should be kept in the private sector because it's currently part of a legal dispute. Now look at what the Biden administration did when it got the reins. We had 1% inflation. We were raising wages in the toughest places, the old-fashioned way. We weren't making government the centerpiece of our lives. I understand through frustration how it's easy to go there. But you look at some of the first moves. And now, remember, we're asking OPEC to produce more oil when we shut down the Keystone XL pipeline. We were stopping exploration and drilling on our federal lands. And I'm the guy that started the climate caucus here on the Republican side, and I believe in the long run, the cleanest, least expensive fuel is going to win the day. But we can't ignore the things that we should be doing, like budgets through regular order, like remaining energy independent in the short run, so that we're not in positions like we currently find ourselves. We're 100% dependent for 17 key mineral resources, and a lot of the new technology that we'll be addressing climate issues with. Who's cornering the market? It's China. And when we get diverted, and when we don't do budgets, when we get down a trail that's unsustainable, we're going to end up with problems and issues that are going to be far greater than what we're talking about here today. American families want us to get a few things right. They want us to live within our means. They don't want us to borrow money from their kids and their grandkids, and we should all be working together in the proper jurisdiction to address these issues. But when it comes to the Budget Committee, I think we ought to stay more focused on it, and I know that it hasn't been popular to do it the old-fashioned way. We've only put a budget together, I think, once in the last 20 years. I'll end with this quote from Admiral Mike Mullen, and this is from Defense. And I think part of the problem here in D.C. is that we roll over for each other's needs. Republicans for defense when we hold it sacrosanct, and we don't require it to do audits. The other side of the aisle getting way ahead of its skis when we can't afford it, even though it might be well-intentioned. He said, as it relates to defense, and we're looking at it right now with Putin peering into Ukraine, that I fear red ink more than I do the red menace. And I think that's a good statement that ought to be put into practice and that we ought to look at for across this federal government.